With all the craziness in the housing market, I've lost track of how many fellow agents, friends, and clients have asked some version of, "Hey Andy, are we about to see the 2007 housing crash happen all over again?" Just thinking of that time likely is a trigger for anybody over the age of 30, so I get it. I also get it because of all of the other economic issues that exist today. Inflation, unlike anything anybody under 45 would ever remember, interest rates increasing, skyrocketing home prices, multiple bids. It's all absolutely insane. And what happens if or when that bubble bursts, right? But I'm here to tell you to stop worrying about a coming repeat of 2007. Oh, and by the way, I'm Andrew Coppins, Realtor with Exit Strategy Realty here in Chicago, and you're watching Close with Coppins, my little corner of the real estate world to talk about tips, trends, and topics that matter to buyers and sellers here in Chicago. Now, I'm not blaming anybody for thinking that this could be 2007 all over again. It might be easy to see those rising home prices, the stories about inflation gone wild, and the rising interest rates and assume that, well, we're just going to see this bubble burst like we did in 2007. Well, I'm sorry because I'm about to burst your worry bubble. Because the fear just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Don't get me wrong, I believe change is coming to the market, but it's change that will be healthier for the overall housing market here in Chicago, or at least it should be. In fact, I've got 4 different sets of data that's going to tell us that we're not about to see a massive housing bubble. First off, housing is not as unaffordable as you're being led to believe. Yes, home prices have totally risen, and we all know of those insane stories of multiple offer situations, which are a little bit more suburban than city, but anyway. However, price is just one component of affordability. You must also remember that you have to factor in the mortgage rate and your income, as well as the price of your home to get to affordability. Even with the rising interest rates that we've been seeing over the past month and the continued rise in home sale prices, the reality is that the affordability of homes still sits under lenders' magic balancing number of 28% of your income being spent on housing. In 2007, it was the exact opposite. People were spending more of their income on housing, and the measure of income to mortgage was the polar opposite of what it is today, at 31%, sometimes up to 34%. We also have to keep in mind that we've lived through some of the most historically low mortgage rates in history. So yes, your 5% or 5.5% seems like a lot, but historically speaking, you, the home buyer, are still in a good position, even over 5% for your mortgage. Ask anybody who bought a home in the 90s or 2000s, and guess what? They'd kill to get that rate. As for income, well, on the average, incomes in Chicago are actually on the rise and outpacing the home price increases in the city. According to recent data, income is rising at about 14%, and home prices are up about 11%, which of course means you are earning more than you're spending on housing, all of which adds up to homes being more affordable on average. Let the numbers speak for themselves when it comes to the reality of today versus the reality of 2007 when it comes to home affordability. The average home affordability is 3% below that 28% average, and nearly 10% better than that 2007 number. Now the caveat here is, of course, this is all at 20% down, and saving for that kind of a down payment is not for everybody these days. But even without that in the mix, the average mortgage affordability issues that existed in 2007 just simply don't exist today. Additionally, and this is reason number 2 as to why the markets are not even close to the same, mortgage rules are far more reined in than they were back in 2007. For instance, during that era, you had nearly $350 billion of loans to those with credit scores under 620. Today, that number stands at less than $100 billion, or over 2/3 less than in 2007, and thus making the market far less leveraged with the riskiest borrower pool today. Now, you could still get a loan with your credit score below 620 today, but there are many more mechanisms in place that add security for both the borrower and the banks, and thus limiting the risk to the overall steadiness of the housing market. By the way, since we're at the halfway point, now would be a great time for you to, go ahead, and if you like what you're seeing, make sure you hit that thumbs up, you smash the subscribe button, and you add this channel to your notifications by hitting the bell. But let's get back to this concept that we're about to hit this massive housing bubble. Because the third difference, number 3 in the markets, is the word that has everyone that remembers 2007 scared still to this day: foreclosures. After all, that dreaded word was the death of the housing market back in the day. But could it be similar to today, especially with the amount of loans that were, going into forbearance during the pandemic? The short answer, no. Why? Well, in 2007, there were over 1.1 million new foreclosures, rising to as high as over 2 million in 2009. In a market, by the way, that was already oversaturated with homes for sale versus buyers wanting homes. Today, that number, which is given to us by the Federal Reserve, sits at just a shade over 38,000. 2,038,000. You might be tempted to think, well, the government forbearance program explains that 38,000 number, but you'd be wrong. That program ended over 6 months ago, and we haven't seen a flood of bank-owned assets hitting the housing market. That's largely because many of the 800,000 or so that were left in the program at its end have come up with repayment plans that work for all parties involved. But let's go ahead and say that suddenly the bottom falls out of those agreements. What happens to the housing market? Nothing bad. In fact, it could be good news because we have a massive supply issue in the market. So massive that if every one of those homes were to be foreclosed on, it would maybe make us into a balanced marketplace at the most wishful of thinking. Additionally, most homeowners today are not completely upside down on their homes thanks to the pricing into the market and one other key factor, equity. You see, the vast majority have at least 10% equity in the home that they're in trouble on, and at least 40% of all homeowners today have at least 50% equity. What does that mean? It means that no matter what, they can get out of their home without having to bring cash to cover closing costs, instead of worrying about a foreclosure on their record. Do you see how that's advantageous? Yet, we still have not seen that kind of movement from the market either. And don't even get me started on this whole months of supply metric that my fellow realtors love to use. But suffice it to say, no matter how you look at it, the market is hot. We can't even keep enough inventory on the market to satisfy demand. And even if every one of those 800,000 forbearance home owners sold their homes, let's say they all did, we still would have a long way to go to meet buyer demand, which again means what? Nothing that I've talked about would hurt the overall market. It actually might make it more sane and balanced, which brings me to point number 4. Given the shortage of supply, what was the market like in 2007? Well, in the 4-year cycle around the housing crash, there were over 9 months of supply in the market, since we're going to need to use those metrics that were in play back then. Today, well, we've got the exact opposite problem from that housing bubble of 15 years ago. Back then, too many homes, not enough buyers, bad mortgages, high interest rates. Today, too few homes, plenty of buyers on the sidelines, tighter mortgage regulations, and lower interest rates with plenty of room to grow and develop the balanced and healthy market. Simply put, we're not going to bounce from seller's market to bottoming out overnight. It's just a statistical impossibility given the numbers that we know and are forecasting throughout the rest of 2022. Does that mean the craziness won't stop at some point? No. In fact, one of my predictions for 2022 has been that we're going to see buyer burnout happen sooner, and that will lead to longer times on the market and potentially a flattening of prices in the second half of the year. Additionally, if you currently have a home, you're likely in a position to be able to wait out any drastic swings in the housing market should something absolutely crazy happen. Just remember, there is nothing wrong with sitting on the home that you have and riding out the mortgage rates that you're locked into either. Agree or disagree? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, if you've got more questions about this topic or any other topic in real estate, I would be very happy to answer them for you. Or if you're thinking about taking advantage of this moment to sell your home, let's go ahead and have a conversation about what is right for you. Just see the description of this video for all of my best contact information, and I would be happy to consult with you to make the best decision that you can for you and your family. Thank you so very much for tuning in today, and until next time, here's hoping you'll find out what it's like to close with Coppins soon.